My mother-in-law, Margaret Anne Thornton, died at 78. For 12 years, she treated me like I didn't exist. Cold, distant, disapproving. I thought she just hated me. While cleaning out her house in rural Kentucky, I found a diary hidden beneath the floorboards of her bedroom. Inside were 30 years of entries. As I read her words, I discovered why she pushed everyone away. The secret she'd been carrying explained everything. Her coldness, her distance, the walls she built. And suddenly I understood she wasn't cruel. She was broken. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below if you've ever misjudged someone before understanding their full story. I'm Eleanor Mitchell, but everyone calls me Ellie. I've been married to Robert Thornton for 13 years now. From the first day I met Margaret, I knew she didn't approve of me. Not that she ever said it directly. Margaret wasn't the type for confrontation. It was more in the way her eyes would narrow slightly when Robert introduced me. The tight-lipped smile that never reached her eyes. The way she'd deliberately turn conversations away from me at family gatherings. "You like your coffee black?" She once remarked during our second Christmas together. Robert's father liked it black. But my Robert always preferred cream and sugar, just like I taught him. The message was clear. I didn't know her son like she did. I never would. For 13 years I tried everything. Homemade gifts, offering to help with her garden, inviting her for Sunday dinners. Nothing broke through that wall of ice. She'd accept invitations with a polite, "That would be nice," but somehow managed to make me feel like an intruder in my own home. When our daughter Emma was born, I hoped things might change, but Margaret remained distant, stiff even when holding her only grandchild. "Don't take it personally," Robert would always say. "That's just Mom's way. She's been like that since Dad died." 20 years his mother had been a widow, living alone in that old 2-story farmhouse outside Willow Creek, Kentucky. The white paint always fresh despite its age, the garden meticulously maintained, everything in its proper place, just like Margaret herself. The Thornton family had lived in that part of Kentucky for generations. The house sat on 15 acres of rolling hills, far enough from neighbors that you couldn't see another light at night. Inside, everything was preserved as if time stopped decades ago. Floral wallpaper, antique furniture, family photos where no one smiled, a home without warmth. I never understood why she disliked me so much. I wasn't from Kentucky, maybe that was it. Or maybe she had someone else in mind for her only son. Whatever the reason, I had resigned myself to the fact that Margaret Anne Thornton would never accept me. And then she died, and everything I thought I knew about her changed completely. The funeral was exactly what Margaret would have wanted. Small, dignified, without fuss. Few tears were shed. How do you mourn someone who never let you know them? The minister spoke of her devotion to her church, her precision in keeping records for the Historical Society, her famous pecan pie at community events, but nothing of her heart. Nothing of love. 3 days later, Robert and I arrived at the house to begin the difficult task of sorting through 78 years of a life. The April air was cool and damp, threatening rain that never quite came. The old house creaked its welcome as we stepped onto the porch. "Where do we even begin?" I asked, staring at the immaculate living room. Not a book out of place, not a cushion unfluffed. "Mom left instructions," Robert said, pulling out a neatly typed list from his pocket. Of course she did. We started in the kitchen, boxing dishes and silverware, deciding what to keep and what to donate. Even her pantry was organized by expiration date. The living room was next, books arranged by height on the shelves, photo albums labeled by year. But the photos themselves told little of Margaret's life. Formal portraits, holiday gatherings, everyone posed and proper, no candid joy captured. "I've never seen a picture of your mom really smiling," I said, flipping through a Christmas album from the 90s. Robert shrugged. She wasn't the smiling type. By late afternoon, we had made it upstairs to her bedroom. The queen-sized bed was still made with hospital corners, a single pillow in the center of the headboard. For 20 years, she'd slept alone in this big bed. On the dresser sat 3 photos, her wedding picture, a portrait of Robert in his college graduation gown, and a studio portrait of Emma from when she was 3. Nothing else personal, nothing of her heart. I opened her closet. A row of dresses, mostly navy and black, hung with precise spacing between each hanger. Boxes of shoes labeled by type. Sweaters folded with department store precision. She never wore most of these, Robert said, fingering a silk dress with the price tag still attached. Don't know why she kept buying them. I moved toward the center of the room, my foot landing on a floorboard that gave a different sound, hollower, somehow, than the others. I shifted my weight and it moved slightly. Robert, look at this. I knelt down and pressed on the edge of the board. It lifted easily, revealing a small space beneath. Inside was a dusty wooden box about the size of a shoebox, its lid carved with simple flowers. I had no idea that was there, Robert said, kneeling beside me. I lifted the box carefully, setting it on the bed. When I opened it, the musty smell of old paper rose to meet us. Inside was a leather-bound book, its cover worn soft at the corners, and beneath it, an envelope. It's a diary, I said, opening to the first page. The handwriting was neat and small, nothing like the shaky script Margaret had used in her later years. The first entry was dated June 15th, 1968. Should we read it? I asked, suddenly feeling like an intruder. Robert stared at the book, conflict clear in his eyes. She's gone, he finally said. And maybe there's something in here that explains her. I nodded, turning back to the first page. June 15th, 1968. James asked me to marry him today by the creek where we first met. I've never been so happy in all my 22 years. Mother says we're too young, but when you know, you know. He's everything I've ever wanted. Kind, hardworking, with those eyes that crinkle when he laughs. I can't wait to be Margaret Anne Thornton. I looked up at Robert in shock. The voice in these pages was nothing like the Margaret we knew. This was a young woman full of hope and love. I turned a few pages forward. October 3rd, 1968. Our wedding day was perfect. The church was full of fall flowers, and James couldn't stop smiling when I walked down the aisle. I've never felt so beautiful or so loved. We're going to fill this house with children and laughter. I want at least 4. James says he'll give me as many as I want as long as they have my smile. I flipped forward several years, stopping randomly. January 15th, 1973. Today I did something unforgivable. Something I can never take back. God forgive me, because I'll never forgive myself. The handwriting here was different. Shaky, pressed hard into the page as if written with tremendous force. Some of the words were smudged, as if tears had fallen on the page. What happened in 1973? I whispered, looking at Robert. He shook his head. I wasn't born until 1975. I felt a chill run through me. The Margaret in these early pages was someone I had never known. Someone warm, hopeful, capable of love and excitement. What had happened to turn her into the cold woman we knew? What unforgivable thing had she done? I think we need to read this, I said. All of it. Robert nodded slowly. Let me get us some coffee. It's going to be a long night. We sat on Margaret's perfectly preserved bed, the diary between us, and began to read. The early entries painted a picture of a woman I couldn't reconcile with the mother-in-law I knew. April 18th, 1969. James surprised me with a picnic by the lake today. He's been working such long hours at the factory. I barely see him some weeks. But he always makes time for our Saturday adventures. Today he had news. He's been promoted. We celebrated with the bottle of champagne we've been saving. Under the stars, he held me close and said, Maggie, we're going to have the perfect life. And I believe him with all my heart. Maggie? Robert said, his voice breaking. No one ever called her Maggie. I squeezed his hand and continued reading. The entries through 1969 and 1970 were filled with simple joys, gardening, church socials, visits with friends, holiday celebrations. Then, in October 1970, the tone changed. October 20th, 1970. The doctor confirmed it today. After trying for so long, I'm finally pregnant, James cried when I told him. My strong, steady husband actually cried. We've agreed not to tell anyone until Christmas. It will be our special secret for now. I already love this little one so much my heart could burst. I had a sibling? Robert whispered. I turned more pages, reading entries about nursery preparations, name discussions, and Margaret's growing anticipation. Then came an entry from May 1971. May 12th, 1971. She's here. Our beautiful Sarah Anne Thornton arrived at 3:17 this morning. 7 pounds, 6 ounces of perfection. She has James's eyes in my chin, the nurse says. I've never known it was possible to love someone so completely the moment you meet them. James can't stop holding her. He says she's going to be Daddy's little girl, but I told him he'll have to share. I looked at Robert. His face had gone pale. Sarah, he whispered. I had a sister named Sarah. We read on through entries of Sarah's first smile, first tooth, first steps. Margaret's joy leaped from every page. Then, toward the end of 1972, the tone began to shift. November 28th, 1972, Sarah is the most precious, stubborn little thing. No is her favorite word these days. She's keeping me on my toes, but I wouldn't have it any other way. James works so much now, trying to save for a bigger house. I wish he was home more to see how fast she's growing. She looks more like him every day. The entries became shorter, more hurried, as if Margaret was too busy with her toddler to write at length. And then we reached January 1973, and everything changed. January 15th, 1973, I was driving. The roads were icy. Sarah was in the back seat. My beautiful baby girl, only 3 years old. I looked away for just a second. The car slid. The tree came so fast. Sarah didn't survive. My daughter died because I wasn't careful enough. James forgave me, but I never will. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. Beside me, Robert had gone completely still. His sister, a sister he never knew he had died 2 years before he was born. Oh my God, I whispered. She blamed herself. The next several entries were almost illegible, the handwriting erratic, some pages stained with what could only have been tears. February 3rd, 1973. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the sound of metal crushing. I hear her last cry. James says I need to eat, but food tastes like ash. How do I live in a world where my baby doesn't? March 17th, 1973. James took down the nursery today. I screamed at him. How could he erase her so quickly? He said it's been 2 months, that we need to start healing. There is no healing from this. There is only surviving each minute, each hour. June 22nd, 1973. James brought home flowers today, said we need to find our way back to each other. How can I? I killed our daughter. He says it was an accident, that the roads were treacherous, that anyone could have crashed. But it wasn't anyone. It was me, her mother, the one who should have protected her. The entries became less frequent through 1973 and 1974. Margaret wrote about James drinking more, about them barely speaking, about the growing chasm between them. December 24th, 1974. James wants to try for another baby, says it might help us heal. How can I tell him that I'm terrified? What if I fail another child? What if I don't love it enough? What if I love it too much and then lose it too? Some days I think it would be easier if he just left me. And then, in August 1975, there was a shift. August 17th, 1975. Robert James Thornton came into the world today. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. James is ecstatic. He keeps saying, it's a boy, as if he can't believe it. I don't know what I feel. Relief that the birth went well. Fear of all that could go wrong. When they placed him in my arms, I looked for Sarah in his face. Is that terrible? He deserves his own place, not to be a replacement. James says this is our second chance. But I know better. There are no second chances. Only living with what we've done. Robert's hands were shaking. She never told me, he whispered. All these years, and I never knew I had a sister. I put my arm around him. Keep reading, I said gently. I think we need to understand all of it. The entries through Robert's childhood were sporadic. Margaret wrote about milestones, his first steps, first day of school, baseball games, but always with a detached tone, as if she were documenting rather than experiencing. September 8th, 1980. Robert started kindergarten today. He was so excited, barely looked back when the bus came. James took the day off to see him off. I waved from the porch. Sarah would have been 8 this year, starting 3rd grade. I wonder if they would have walked to the bus stop together, if she would have held his hand. May 15th, 1982, found James's whiskey bottles hidden in the garage today. He's drinking more than I realized. When I confronted him, he said I haven't been a real wife to him in years. He's right. I can't remember the last time I let him touch me. I can't remember how to feel anything but numb. November 3rd, 1983. James is seeing someone. Her name is Diane. She works at the bank. I've known for 3 months. I haven't said anything. Maybe she makes him happy. Someone should be happy in this family. December 25th, 1985. Robert looks like Sarah sometimes. The way he tilts his head when he's thinking hard, the same cowlick that never stays down. James doesn't see it, or pretends not to. Robert asked for a sibling for Christmas this year. Neither of us knew what to say. Then, in 1990, a devastating entry. April 28th, 1990. James is gone. Heart attack while at work. Robert found me sitting on the porch when he got home from school. I couldn't cry, not even for my son's sake. What kind of monster am I? James deserved better than what I gave him these last 17 years. The funeral is Saturday. I'll wear the blue dress he always liked. It's the least I can do now. I looked at Robert. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I had no idea. He shook his head. I remember that day, coming home and finding her just sitting there. She told me Dad was dead, then went inside to make dinner like it was any other day. I cried alone in my room. We continued reading. Margaret wrote about raising Robert alone, about her relief when he went to college. He deserves to be free of this house of me, about her growing isolation. And then came entries about me. June 12th, 2005. Robert brought home a girl today. Eleanor from Cincinnati. She's lovely, bright, laughs easily, looks at my son like he hung the moon. I hate that I can't tell her how perfect she is for him. I hate that I'll drive her away like I drive everyone away. But it's better this way. I'm poison. Everyone who loves me suffers. September 18th, 2010, Robert and Ellie are getting married next month. She invited me to go dress shopping with her mother. I declined. I saw the hurt in her eyes. I see how he loves her, like James loved me once before I ruined everything. I push her away to save her from me, from the darkness that follows me. They deserve their happiness. They'll be better off keeping their distance. December 25th, 2012. They named her Emma Sarah. They don't know why I left the room when they told me. How could they? My granddaughter carries my dead daughter's name. Every time I hear it, the wound tears open again. Eleanor watches me like she's trying to solve a puzzle. She's kind, keeps trying despite my coldness. I wish I could tell her, it's not you. It's never been you. We read into the night. Through years of Margaret's isolated life, her growing physical ailments, her reflections on the family gatherings she attended but never truly participated in. Then we reached the entries from the past year, January 3rd, 2022. Dr. Sullivan confirmed what I already knew. The cancer has spread. 6 months, maybe a year at most. I declined treatment. What's the point of prolonging this half-life I've been living? For the first time in decades, I feel a strange sort of peace. An end is coming. March 15th, 2022, made out my will today. Everything goes to Robert, of course. Considered telling him about Sarah, about all of it. But what good would it do now? Some burdens shouldn't be passed on. Some secrets should die with their keepers. July 8th, 2022. Weaker every day now. Can barely manage the stairs. Started sorting through things. So many regrets. So many if-onlys. If only I'd been a real mother to Robert. If only I'd been a real mother-in-law to Eleanor. If only I'd let people in. If only I'd forgiven myself. And then, the final entry, dated just 3 days before she died. October 2nd, 2022. I'm dying. Soon I'll see Sarah again. Maybe she'll forgive me, even if I can't forgive myself. To whoever finds this, I wasn't born cold. Life made me this way. Every wall I built was to protect others from my pain. I hurt people by pushing them away. I know that now. Too late, but I know. Tell my son I loved him. Tell his wife I saw her kindness, even when I couldn't show mine back. I'm sorry for all the warmth I couldn't give. I had none left after Sarah died. Tears streamed down my face as I read the last words. Beside me, Robert was openly weeping, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She loved you, I whispered. She just didn't know how to show it. At the bottom of the box, beneath the diary, was a yellowed envelope. Inside we found treasures and heartbreak. A small lock of blonde hair tied with a faded pink ribbon. A hospital bracelet. Baby girl Thornton. 1271. A newspaper clipping about the accident. Local child dies in icy road collision, with a small paragraph about 3-year-old Margaret Anne Thornton. A photograph of a laughing toddler with Robert's eyes and curls. There were other items, too. A prescription bottle for antidepressants from 1983. Letters addressed to Robert but never sent. One from his high school graduation, another from his wedding day. A letter addressed to me. Dear Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone. You've spent years thinking I disliked you. The truth is I admired you. Your strength, your kindness. The way you love my son without reservation. You reminded me of myself before grief hollowed me out. I couldn't bear to be close to you because I couldn't bear to see what I'd lost. The ability to love openly, to feel joy without fear. Every time you reached out to me, I saw what I should have been, could have been, if I hadn't let grief consume me. Take care of my Robert. He deserves the love I couldn't give him. And know that my coldness was never about you. It was about a broken woman who forgot how to be whole. Margaret, I handed the letter to Robert, who read it through fresh tears. All these years, I whispered. All these years I thought she hated me. Robert shook his head, staring at the photograph of his sister. She was protecting us. In her own damaged way, she was trying to protect us from her pain. We sat in silence for a long time, processing all we had learned. Margaret hadn't been cruel. She had been crippled by grief and guilt for 50 years. She hadn't rejected me. She had been afraid to love anyone after losing Sarah. Every cold word, every distant look had been a shield, not a weapon. What do we do now? I asked. Do we tell the family? Your cousins, Emma? Robert looked at the diary, then at the photograph of his sister. I had a sister, he said, wonder and grief mingling in his voice. For 3 years before I was born, I had a sister my parents never told me about. I took his hand. We need to decide. Does knowing this change anything? Would Margaret want us to share her secret now? After a sleepless night, Robert and I decided the truth needed to be known. Not to assign blame, but to understand, to finally know the real Margaret. We gathered Robert's cousins, his Aunt Clara, Margaret's sister, and our daughter Emma, now 10 years old, for dinner the following weekend. After the meal, Robert stood at the head of the table, the diary in his hands. I found something in Mom's house, he began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. Something that explains a lot about who she was, why she was, the way she was. He told them about finding the diary, about Sarah, about the accident in 1973. As he spoke, I watched the faces around the table transform, shock, disbelief, and then a dawning understanding. Aunt Clara covered her mouth with a trembling hand. We all agreed never to speak of it, she said finally. After the accident, Margaret changed overnight. James thought it was best, that talking about Sarah would only deepen her depression. Then it just became the thing no one mentioned. The longer we kept silent, the harder it became to break that silence. I knew, said Cousin Mary, Robert's father's sister. I was 13 when it happened. I remember Sarah. She was the sweetest little thing. After the funeral, it was like Margaret built a wall around herself. We all just accepted it. We thought it was better to leave it buried. I had a sister, Robert said, his voice breaking. All my life I felt like something was missing. Sometimes I'd catch Mom staring at me with this look I couldn't understand. Sometimes she'd call me by another name when she was half asleep. Sarah, she'd mumble. I thought I was mishearing. Emma, old enough to understand but young enough to see with unclouded eyes, asked the question no adult had dared. Why didn't anyone help Grandma Margaret? She was sad for 50 years and nobody helped her. The silence that followed was heavy with collective guilt. We failed her, Aunt Clara finally said. We thought leaving her alone with her grief was kindness. We were wrong. That night, after everyone had gone and Robert had finally fallen into exhausted sleep, I sat alone with Margaret's diary. 12 years of judgment, of hurt feelings, of thinking my mother-in-law despised me. All of it looked different now. I remembered how Margaret would watch Emma playing but never join in. How she'd flinch almost imperceptibly when Emma would run too close to the street. How she'd leave the room during birthday parties when the candles were lit, as if she couldn't bear to watch another year marked. What I had interpreted as coldness had been fear. What I had seen as rejection had been self-protection. Margaret hadn't been the villain of my marriage. She had been a victim of unprocessed trauma, a woman frozen in the worst moment of her life. If only I had known, if only someone had told us. Would it have changed anything? Could I have helped her heal even a little? Or would knowing have just given me the compassion to accept what couldn't be changed? I thought of all the times I'd complained about her to friends. My mother-in-law is an ice queen, I'd say, rolling my eyes. She's never given me a chance. How unfair those judgments seem now. Margaret had been watching me all along, seeing my kindness, appreciating my love for her son, wishing she could connect, but not knowing how to bridge the chasm grief had created. The next morning, Robert and I drove to Willow Creek Cemetery. With the help of the groundskeeper, we found it, a small headstone in the older section, partially obscured by overgrown grass. Simple and unadorned, Sarah Anne Thornton, 1971-1973. Beloved daughter. Beside it was a newer plot, the earth still fresh, Margaret's grave. She had arranged to be buried next to her daughter, reunited at last. Robert knelt before his sister's grave, touching the stone tentatively, as if it might disappear. "I should have known you," he whispered. "All these years, and I never knew." I placed the bouquet of daisies we had brought between the two graves. Robert had his arm around me, both of us contemplating the two lives. One cut tragically short, the other lived in the shadow of that loss. "She's with Sarah now," I said. "Maybe she's finally found peace." On the drive home, Robert asked the question that had been haunting both of us. What do we do with this knowledge? Do we keep her diary, share it? What would she want? I thought carefully before answering. I think she would want to be understood. Not pitied, not excused, but understood. She carried this secret for 50 years, Robert. Maybe it's time to lift that burden. We decided to preserve the diary, to share Margaret's story. Not all at once, and not with everyone, but gradually, with those who had known and misunderstood her. With Emma when she was older, so she would understand that sometimes the coldest people are the ones most deeply wounded. "I want our children to know that pain transforms people," Robert said. "That sometimes what looks like cruelty is actually unbearable suffering." We visited the cemetery regularly after that. Each time I would speak to Margaret as if she could hear me. "I understand now. I forgive you. I wish I could have known the real you." The Kentucky spring had arrived, bringing wildflowers and warm breezes. I stood before the two graves, now both adorned with proper headstones and fresh flowers. Robert had commissioned a small angel statue to sit between them, a guardian for both mother and daughter. "She wasn't a cold woman," I said to the quiet cemetery. "She was a grieving mother who never healed. Every harsh word was a shield. Every wall was built to protect us from her pain. She loved us by keeping her distance." In the months since finding the diary, I'd thought often about Margaret, about how tragedy had reshaped her, about how one moment of ice and metal and terrible chance had defined 50 years of her life, how grief, unprocessed, had become her personality, how we had judged her without knowing her story. I thought about the secrets families keep, thinking they're protecting each other when really they're just allowing wounds to fester, about how silence doesn't heal but preserves pain in amber, unchanging and eternal. I had brought something with me today, a framed photograph from my office. It showed Margaret at 22 on her wedding day, her smile radiant and full of hope. Next to it was the only picture we had of Sarah, the laughing toddler with golden curls. I wanted to remember both Margarets, the one full of dreams, and the one shaped by loss. Both were true. Both deserve to be known. "Everyone is fighting invisible battles," I whispered to the graves. "Coldness often masks unbearable pain. Second chances don't always come in life, but understanding can come after death, and forgiveness is never too late." I placed a small note between the flowers on Margaret's grave. "Margaret, I understand now. Rest with Sarah." Then I walked back to the car where Robert waited, ready to return to our life. A life now enriched by a deeper understanding of the past and of the complex, wounded woman who had shaped it. Have you ever judged someone without knowing their story? What secrets might explain the coldest people you know? Leave your comment below. Subscribe for more emotional stories. Share if you believe everyone has a reason for their walls.